Okay, so here's something that I tell people about all the time, and they're always asking me for the recipe, and I always tell them I don't have one, so I'm just going to show you how to make them. Alright. Coconut oil in a big metal, preferably, bowl. And these are tablespoons, loose tablespoons. One. There's got to be a better way to do this too. 3, 4, and this is 1.5 tablespoons, so that'd actually be 5, 6.5. Let's just make it 8 tablespoons of coconut oil. Again, loose approximations. And now I'm just going to put it on a burner on the very lowest setting. Make sure it's the right one. I'm not going to burn my house. Kerrygold grass-fed butter. And I just put the metal pot right there on the burner. It'll also work with Pyrex, and it'll probably look a lot cooler because glow. But if you're not really into aesthetics while cooking, then stick with the metal. Alright, so if you're making a video of this, you should unwrap the butter first. That's a definite tip from the pros here. Alright, so 8 tablespoons. This is going to be 1.5, 3-ish, probably right at 4. Let's see. 5.5, and I'll go one more. 7-ish. Again, not an exact science. And if you're keto, this is not gross, that I'm about to just eat some butter and coconut oil. Everybody else probably thinks I'm nuts. But, so, you got your fats ready for your fat bomb. And then, I'm actually going to turn the heat up a little bit just to get it going, but I recommend you don't scorch this. Grass-fed butter does take a bit longer to melt from what I can understand or from what I can gather. So we're going to pause. Let's see. Starting to mix, or melt rather. And next, 100% cacao. You can use cocoa. You can even use the Kroger, or not Kroger, but the Hershey brand cocoa powder. It doesn't really matter. It's just cocoa powder. This is cacao. It's a little less processed. Supposedly better on the antioxidant profile, but it was also on sale, which works for me. So anyway, here in the cocoa powder, I've already got a spoon because I go through a mountain of this stuff. Half tablespoon times, well, I was going to say 3, so we'll just do that heaping. Alright. And then also on the ingredient list is almond flour, chopped nuts of your choosing, and you don't have to. I use a bone broth protein powder, which is keto, but also gives me a little bit of extra nutrition because I use these right before bed or right before workout, or right after a workout, one of the two. One of the 3 rather. So it's times when I'm okay with consuming protein, which is basically any time because I'm pretty much always doing something hyperactive. But nonetheless, right before, right after a workout, pop in a couple of these bad boys, and I'm good to go. So once this is all melted, we'll start mixing in the dry ingredients. The last of which I didn't actually, there's an intermediary ingredient, which is peanut butter. Now, peanut butter is arguably a good source of calories if you're on keto, or a terrible one. And I think it just depends on who you talk to. I like it. I don't like almond butter. I don't like sunflower butter. So if you do like one of those other things and you want to make it with that, it's probably a little bit healthier, but at this point I'm just maintaining ketosis and a pleasant flavor profile. And these don't make up the primary bit of my diet. And I don't have peanut butter jelly sandwiches to fall back on like I used to. So you will pry my peanut butter from my cold, dead hands. Alright, moving along. What I'm using is Adam's 100% natural creamy peanut butter. You can use anything you want. This has 2 grams of sugar, none of which are added though, which is a big deal for me. 7 grams of carbs, 3 grams of fiber, so it's a net 4 gram carb for every 2 tablespoons. You're not going to take in a tablespoon per cookie, so that's straight. Alright, so this bad boy is mixed. We're going to add in some of the other ingredients. And this is when you'll probably hear me cursing because I mess up everything along the way. This is also where the recipe starts to break down as far as being an actual recipe versus just being something I feel. I'm going to do 5 of these heaping 1.5 tablespoons, so we're probably more like 2 tablespoons. 5 of those, so we're looking at about 10-ish tablespoons of your peanut butter. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I bet this stuff mixes well in water because of how micronized it is. 5, but I've never mixed it. Never actually drank any protein powder since I've been on keto. Alright, so I'm just going to beat that together a little preemptively, mainly because I want to calm this dust storm down. Get it all mixed with the wet food, or the wet ingredients rather. I usually end up with about 1 cup to 1.5 cups of almond flour in here. I start with 1 cup, and maybe 1.25 cups from the looks of it. I'm not a scientist. And what you want to get it to is a consistency that's pretty thick, almost like peanut butter, a little bit thicker than peanut butter would be. But if it gets too thick, you'll have to add in some of the additional, I usually use melted, I'll melt down some more coconut oil or butter and throw that in there if I feel it's gotten too thick. Alright, now there's a couple more things I have to add that are optional. The first of which my wife has told me is not an option, are flaked coconut, unsweetened. I got the Kroger brand. It's 3 grams of carbs, 2 grams of fiber. So it's less than 1 gram of sugar or carb per 2 tablespoons. And you're not going to get anywhere near that. It's negligible at best what you're going to consume. A little bit of that. And hi, buddy. How are you? Some chopped walnuts, or I'm sorry. Let's do a retake. Some chopped pecans, which I'm also grinding a little bit in my hand to make them a little bit finer. Normally I would use a little slap chop device, but that has all gotten misplaced over the years, over the weeks. Definitely over the months of doing keto and actually figuring out what most of this space in my kitchen is for. You will learn how to use your kitchen when you do keto, or you will spend money on fancy keto treats, which I don't get to do very often, but I do enjoy. So 1 cup wasn't quite enough. It's still pretty runny. I'm going to add the other half cup of almond flour and regroup. And this goes back to how I tell people I don't have a recipe, because maybe I can reverse engineer it from this video, which is part of the reason why I'm doing this. I'm a bit of an experimenter when it comes to any variables I can isolate and test, especially within my own body. I like to do that. Not within my body, but you know. Okay. I'm going to call this about 90% done. Also optional, MCT oil powder. I've actually added liquid MCT oil in the past, but we don't have any. It's more expensive than the powder, and I tend to have a harder time accurately measuring that stuff because I tend to eyeball everything. So I'm going to say 2 cups. At this point we've got about 2 cups of almond flour in, and I'm ready to start scooping the cookies out into individual servings. Yep, voila. Cookie sheet, parchment paper, room in your freezer. That's a. You know what? I don't think they're ready yet. Let's go back to the drawing board. Okay, I added another half cup of almond flour, and I'm going down with the ship if it doesn't work this time. So, if you want, and what I did when I first started this whole process was to take and count how many scoops you have, add up the ingredients, and create a recipe in MyFitnessPal. And then if you put in how many scoops or how many ounces of flour and peanut butter and all the other jazz you use, and how many servings you got out of it, MyFitnessPal will give you the macros per serving. I look at things simply. Will this kick me out of ketosis? And if so, how bad, and is it worth it? These things, though, these are not going to kick you out of keto. There's very little in the way of carbs compared to the amount of fat and protein that's in them, so they're a good ratio, and they're tasty. But you have to keep them in the freezer, and I'll show you what they look like. Here's a couple testers. They're going to go in the freezer with the main batch, which is there. All right, all right. I don't know where to put. You can see they get pretty runny, though. I've never done it on paper plate. That was a bad choice. Chilled metal is better. Chilled metal.